Welcome to the Food Professor Podcast, presented by Cattle, Season 4, Episode 27. I'm Michael LeBlanc.
And I'm the Food Professor, Sylvain Charlebois.
Our very special guests this week are all the way from the province of my father. That's right, I'm a proud Acadian, New Brunswick. Our guests, James Crosby, President and CEO of Crosby Foods, together with Lori King, who leads their innovation and marketing. James is the fifth generation of the Crosby family to serve as president of Crosby Foods.
Unbelievable.
And unlike their flagship product that Canadians would know and love, this interview is not as slow as molasses.
Whoa. Is your nickname Michael Molasses LeBlanc? Maybe we didn't know that. Half of you from New Brunswick.
That's right. That's right. That's only when I'm running miles. Then
I love molasses, by the way. I actually love it. Actually, when I worked on dairy farms when I was a kid, we actually used to pour molasses on hay. Cows were going crazy. Gave us more milk to thank us. It was great.
Could you? Well, listen, they've got a very traditional product, but they're looking at modernizing. I've got in my hands, they were kind enough to send me a bottle of, I'm going to try it on the cooking show, maple and molasses. So they're trying new things, thinking new ways, fifth generation, right? They've got a lot of capabilities that they're thinking, hey, what else can we do with this? So more to follow. It's a great interview with a great Canadian company. So more to follow soon enough on that. All right, well, let's get to the news. And there's lots to cover, so we're going to kind of marshal through pretty quickly. Let's start with this charts that you've been showing me off mic, and then now you're sharing where Canadians are spending $248 versus $339 a month. Now, the $339 a month is what is generally accepted, and I think that's from Canada's Food Price Report, is what it takes to feed the average person. Now, and so it looks like something's going on. You've been talking about this in one way, shape, or form for like the better part of a year. People have seemed to be spending
more than a year. Oh, yeah.
Right, less money. So there's a couple things we think could be going on. They could be downsizing. They could be being more efficient about it. They could be shifting banners. They could be just getting by on less. Now, first of all, the $339 a month, let's just index that for the listeners. Where does that number come from, and how do we understand that number versus the 248? And then we can get into what you think is going on.
Yeah, so basically, every year we publish Canada's Food Price Report, and we actually look at at a healthy food basket for a family of four, essentially. And so we've been using the same food basket for 15 years now, and that for us is like the benchmark for a healthy diet. So the amount of money you have to spend to support a healthy diet. So right now for 2024, each person would need to spend, based on prices out there, they would need to spend $339 a month. So that's kind of the benchmark there. And so every year, obviously, it goes up because of inflation. What we've been tracking also is what Statistics Canada is telling us about retail food sales. And, seeing that the population is growing in Canada, more stomachs to feed, that's always good news for the food industry. So one would think that food retail sales would actually be going up. They're not at all. Like in real dollars, if you look at the data, sales are going down. And that's category 445, folks. Okay, so there are many different categories. 445 would include everything, not just grocery stores, but smaller specialty stores, convenience stores, everything. So, but
not food service and restaurants, just to be clear for the listeners.
No, it excludes service. So we basically use the same line, if you will, over 6 years. And so we were consistent with our methodology. You can always question the methodology, but right now I would say that things really don't make much sense. It's actually counterintuitive to when you say to someone, well, despite inflation, people are actually spending less on food. So a lot of people, I can feel that a lot of people are saying, what? That doesn't make sense. When I go to the grocery store, I have to spend more. That's not what's going on. Basically, to your point, people are just shifting and using different channels to get their food. We don't think that people are eating less. They're just going elsewhere to get food, non-traditional routes that aren't necessarily considered as food retailers by Statistics Canada. And what we notice is the conversion point was July 2021. Before July 2021, you saw the chart. In July 2021, before that, it was all good. People were spending more than the benchmark, the health benchmark. Since July 2021, it's been the reverse, and that gap is increasing. But I must say, Michael, I'm a little bit worried because I was talking to some folks this afternoon about the status of the food retail environment right now in Canada, and it's not great. I mean, GDP per capita is down in Canada. The economy is not great. The strongest economic sector we have to support our economic growth right now is the public sector. The public sector, and you need 4 private jobs to support 1 public job. And so right now, if you're thinking about bringing more competition to the Canadian market, it's a hard sell.
Okay, well, let's keep a close eye on that. Obviously, some very interesting numbers coming out. Now, let's talk about, speaking of interesting numbers, April 1st meant more carbon taxes, notwithstanding the government trying to counter-message that with some good news about a lunch program, a school food program. We'll talk about that in a minute. So there's this letter floating around, the carbon tax open letter. You've been vocal around the carbon tax in many different ways. It started with your criticism of, I think, the Bank of Canada is putting a number to it that wasn't well thought out, we didn't think. And so now there's this letter that seems to portray support for the carbon tax, which you're not quite sure you follow the logic behind, or not sure the genesis of the origin of the meaning and genuineness of that letter.
Well, I know who wrote it. I can tell you who wrote it. Actually, you can find it online. It's Christopher Reagan from McGill, and he's a known carbon tax advocate. And basically, he I don't have any proof of that, but I think he was nudged by Environment Canada. There are letters out there that were sent by the Office of the Minister of Environment to different NGOs that do get funded by the government, and asking them to provide some public support for the carbon rebate. Because obviously, so these NGOs are in the food security space, and I can't name them because I don't want to compromise any of my relationships. But this open letter basically happened pretty much at the same time. As I was getting these letters from different groups saying, "Well, what should we do with this? We can't endorse something that is so political right now." And so they just didn't know what to do. And so I kind of gave them my advice, and frankly, I think it's important to recognize that climate change is a problem. We need to fix it. We need to address the issue, especially for the food industry. But right now, there's a lot of poking around in the backseat. And when I saw the open letter, I was not surprised. And of course, I read the letter, and that's when I really became preoccupied. Because you see, Michael, I'm an academic. I don't know how much value these letters have anymore. Like, seriously, universities have actually hired over the last 40, 50 years like-minded people. I mean, if you have an open letter, you will probably sign it. But if it goes against the grain, you just won't. And right now, it is signed by 340 economists that just didn't have anything to risk, because that letter is basically slanted towards more government, more intervention, more taxes, if you catch my drift. But there are 4,000 or 5,000 economists on campuses that haven't said a darn word. And they won't say anything because they don't want to. They want to lose friends. That's basically how it works on campuses nowadays. So that's one. So the open letter, to me, the more people sign that letters, the less value the letter will bring to the table. Secondly, the content of the letter. I mean, anybody with a mind would notice two major mistakes. One, gas emissions have actually dropped 8% between 2019 and 2021. Guess what happened in 2020?
Something happened in March 2020 off the top of my head that
The
got
world
people driving
stopped.
a lot less. Yeah.
When the economy stopped, and of course, gas emissions went down. Everyone knows that, and so that was actually in argument number one. And the other argument, of course, that we've been talking about on this podcast is this whole issue of the cost of living, and they cited the Bank of Canada yet again. And of course, it's out there. We did consult with the Bank of Canada, and their calculations are absolutely superficial. I mean, they just didn't look at the entire CPI. So we can't really say beyond reasonable doubt that the CPI won't be or will be impacted by the carbon tax. I mean, Saskatchewan actually dropped the carbon tax for heating, and their CPI dropped 0.8%. And so the Bank of Canada did say that if you actually scrap the tax, you would see the CPI drop 0.6% once. And in Saskatchewan did it for heating oil, and it dropped 0.8% just for heating oil. Just for heating oil.
I don't know how they're going to win an election with the carbon tax above their head, but they seem to be. You know what they all say. You know, when you're in a hole, stop digging. So anyway,
I think the nicest compromise, and of course, it is a food podcast, and my position has always been clear since day one. I am not against a carbon tax. I'm just against implementing a policy for which we have no idea what lingering costs are going to be over time. And that's why I've always recommended a pause, not an elimination of the tax, because I do believe that at some point we're going to have to do something. Doing nothing is just not an option. And I do believe that Ontario did have the right formula. Quebec has the right formula. And I think that Canada should advocate for a global cap and trade system. And because Canada is well poised to do wonderful things in a global cap and trade system. Why can't we advocate for that?
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that, but it's
it's farmers very good and every agribusinesses out there would be, of course. I mean, if you're a climate change denier, any system you won't like. Okay, I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about real issues. I'm talking about making our industry more competitive, and I actually do think that a global cap and trade system is the best way to go. Yeah.
All right. Not the last time we're going to talk about this, but
probably not. Good. No.
Probably not.
We're going to be monitoring, by the way, just before we end and go on to the next topic, we will monitor how the $80 a metric ton carbon tax will be impacted wholesale and industrial prices, not retail. We don't care about retail. We're looking at the supply chain and how companies are impacted by this hike.
Okay. And so when you say we're looking at it, you would have some body of research to release in the months to come, kind of thing. Is that what you mean?
No, I mean, so obviously it started on Monday, and we need a month, and we need Statistics Canada to tell us what the hell's going on, and that takes 2-3 months. So it's going to take a while before we actually have data.
Season 5.
That's the thing.
See, we'll be talking about it in season 5 in the fall.
5.
All right.
That's the thing about climate. I mean, how can you possibly know that you're making a difference? And right now, and I would say both sides are wrong on this. Yeah. Don't just try to politicize this issue and say, well, it's having an impact, it's not having an impact. Can we just get to the data, like real data? Don't consider Canadians as idiots.
Well, let's talk about, and I mentioned it earlier, that the Liberals had announced a plan which they could have announced many years ago, but they chose to pull it out now with this school food program.
Is the budget out already? It seems like the budget is out already.
They are kind of
spending a lot of money.
Well, there's a lot of PR around the budget. This is, when I was growing up, the budget was a secret. The minister would go buy a new pair of shoes before the budget, and I think that
You
those
remember
days are gone.
a few cabinet ministers actually almost lost their jobs because they were
That's
leaks. Do you remember
but
that?
now it's basically a campaign budget. I mean, this is the start of the campaign, basically.
Yeah.
Anyway, so national school food program, $1 billion over 5 years, so $200 million a year. Launched with providing 400,000 meals or more. So what do you make of this program? I mean, on the one hand, it's hard to criticize any program that gives food to children. Will it make it, will it make a dent? Is it meaningful? How does it, is this the right thing to do at the right place? Any comments on this program? $200 million sounds like a lot of money, but it's really not. So I guess there's going to have to be some kind of means test for who gets or where these lunches are served. So what do you make of all this?
Well, I mean, I think there are two discussions that are required here. One, standards for a food program, a school food program, and actual food, executing on a program like this. Standards, absolutely. I think when you go, many schools already have a school program. Some of them are better than others. Let's face it. I mean, it varies so much from one region to another, one school board to another. So standardizing or at least setting guidelines is absolutely going to be helpful. Now, on the execution part, I think a lot of people, I don't know if you went on X or on social media, but you can feel that people are certainly worried about how our food system is being socialized, the bureaucracy that will be required to manage the program. Listen, we're seeing what's going on with the child care program. I think a lot of people are supportive of a affordable child care program, a nationalized child care program, but Quebec went through the same heartaches. It was tough. I was a parent in Quebec, couldn't find a place. My taxes were paying for one universal system while I was paying a private daycare at $30 a day. So a lot of Canadians are going through that. I suspect that for the food program, we're going to go through the same kinks and people will be disappointed. But is it a good idea in principle? Absolutely. It's just, well, I think that Ottawa, and this is the Trudeau. This is Canada under Trudeau. Mm-hmm. I think Ottawa should have consulted with provinces before doing anything, but it didn't.
Just before we get to our interview with Crosby Foods. So first of all, I was dismayed, or should I be dismayed, that this bird flu livestock, somebody getting bird flu from livestock is happening in the U.S. Yeah. Now, this seems to me somewhat apocalyptic, that the birds, back to the movie Contagion, that the birds have weaponized flu by giving it to the cows who give milk that give it to people, and then it's the end of days here. So what do you make?
No,
what do you make?
It's problematic. It's so 5 states have actually been impacted. We're talking about dairy cows being impacted by the avian flu. So it's in fact maybe they should change the name of the flu, but it was a bit of a surprise. It was the first time ever they actually discovered the avian flu into cows. So it's in 5 states now. 1 human case in Texas. Now the human case basically is displaying very, very mild symptoms, no problem. The challenge, Michael, is our perceptions, right? People are always thinking, "Oh my God, I'm going to get sick. I'm going to die," or "My food stuff is contaminated." There's none of that going on. Food safety is not compromised by the flu. In fact, actually, when the cow is sick, farmers can actually notice very quickly. Production levels are lower. The cow won't produce enough as much milk, and symptoms are pretty easy to read. The challenge right now is to contain the spread as much as possible. But there is a possibility it could cross over to Canada for sure. Is Canada ready for it? Well, the CFI is monitoring the situation, but I don't think it's going to be. I don't think it's going to impact markets. Actually, I've been looking at beef prices because, of course, if you think about dairy, you have to think about beef. And beef prices were just hammered last week and on Monday because of that human case. But now actually futures are up again. So I think there's more rationality compared to 20 years ago with mad cow. Mad cow was just nuts.
Well, I was going to say,
nuts.
Are we? It doesn't sound like we're in the mad cow kind of world, and that is a bit because we learned from mad cow, as well as that. I mean, mad cow is a pretty serious thing. It sounds way more serious than what we're describing here. Yeah,
right. No, absolutely. But they are people who actually died of the Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, which is the human variant to mad cow. Right. But at the same time, you do want to be realistic. The mad cow disease, of course, it was due to bad practices feeding. It's basically was ruminant to ruminant feed, which is basically disgusting. With the research, they discovered that it wasn't great. Right now, they're just trying to figure out how this thing is spreading. They actually believe it may be mechanical through tools and equipment. And if that's the case, it's going to be much easier to contain. Farmers will be able to really contain this very quickly. So right now, markets aren't really that nervous, which is good news for everyone.
All right. Now, what the news giveth, the news also taketh away, because there's also news about, I get this from Food Navigator, that butter was seeing off-the-chart growth. Did you see this? Dairy production price is set to rebound 2024. Butter has got off-the-chart growth. And the article was kind of alluding to the fact that people were looking for a simpler, less complex way to eat as a general trend, and that butter was making a bit of a comeback. What do you make of that? Yeah.
Interesting. Well, right. I mean, butter is butter. I mean, it's been used for many, many years. In Canada right now, I think it's plus 9% in terms of price since last year. It's a lot. It's one.
What do you think about volumes? Are volumes flat, up, down, or sideways?
I haven't seen any data. Nick Nelson IQ would know that. We don't have access to any volume at all. But I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised at all. I mean, if because of the numbers, because of sales that we're seeing, maybe people are actually cooking more, and they're more careful with their food budget, and that would actually bring people to cook more. And what do you need when you're cooking? Well, butter.
Yeah. It all seems to hang together. All right. Well, speaking of butter, from one simple, wonderful ingredient to another, let's talk about molasses, maple syrup, all the great things that are getting cooked up at Crosby Foods out of New Brunswick. So let's move to that part of the show. But first, let's hear from our presenting sponsor, cattle. Ever feel like the world of ratings and reviews needed a superhero? Well, enter Cattle, the caped crusader with Canada's largest, most diverse, and daily active consumer panels. That's right, Cattle is not your average podcast sponsor. So why choose Cattle? Because Cattle excels in consumer insights from your consumer, while also blazing trails in the realm of ratings and reviews, pioneering the future landscape of user-generated content. Beyond the valuable syndicated receipt data, they stand as unparalleled collector of reviews at scale, irrespective of category or price point. A testament to their impact, partnerships with giants like Walmart, Canadian Tire, and more. Visit AskCattle.com now for an exclusive The Food Professor podcast listener discount on your first review or research campaign today. That's AskCattle.com. James and Laura, welcome to The Food Professor podcast. How are you both doing this morning? James, how are you?
I'm wonderful, thank you.
Fantastic. Lori, and yourself? You can
Beautiful
how can you not be
here.
amazing, right? I
Beautiful
mean, it's a Monday morning. Well, listen, thank you both for joining. Sylvan and I were really excited to learn more about your business, your family business. And James, why don't we get started with you? Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do for a living.
Sure. Yeah. No, my name's James Crosby. I'm president and CEO of Crosby Foods. So I'm the fifth generation family member to lead this
Incredible.
business. Yeah. I'm also a father of 3 children under 10. So when I'm not working, I'm running the roads with my family.
No kidding.
So internally you grow your molasses market with your family. That's great strategy.
Lori, what about you? What's your background and what do you do at Crosby's?
Yeah, sure. I'm the director of retail sales, marketing, and innovation here at Crosby's, and I've been here. I've just celebrated my 1 year anniversary.
Oh,
My
that's great.
background is in alcoholic beverage, where I have my own consulting company for many years.
right.
And I just happened to be back in New Brunswick visiting family and had the opportunity to meet James. And we thought that me coming to work for Crosby's would be a great idea. So I'm very happy to be here.
And,
Well,
and Lori, before you joined Crosby, you were based out of Alberta, correct?
Well, I was all over, Sylvain. I had my consulting company in San Francisco to start, then
Oh, yes,
Vancouver,
that's right.
then England. So I recently moved back from England to be here.
Well, we're going to get into what innovation looks like in your line of work at Crosby's. James, let's talk more about the business. You mentioned fifth generation. Give us an overview of Crosby's Molasses, its journey from this founding in, what was it, 1879 to its current position in the market. Scope, scale, what do you sell, and all that great stuff.
Sure. Yeah. No, the business was founded by my great-great-grandfather, Lorenzo George Crosby, back in Yarmouth, Nova Scotia, actually in 1879. So Lorenzo's father had a successful shipping business, and he would export fish and lumber from the Maritimes to the Caribbean. And they, of course, didn't want their ships sailing back empty. So molasses was one of the products that they would import. Initially, it would come in these large barrels called puncheons, but the business really evolved and transformed it over the years. Eventually, we started importing the molasses in bulk ocean vessels. We also got into blending and packaging of dry beverage and dessert blends back in the 70s. We acquired other molasses-related brands, expanded our bulk storage terminal, and recently, within the last 10 years or so, we made a large investment to expand our plant, our production and warehousing space to get into contract manufacturing. So, and sort of all this, we did actually intentionally change our name in December to Crosby Foods, just to reflect that our business is much more than molasses.
Right. So I guess I misspoke when I say Crosby Molasses. But tell me, give us a 101 about molasses. Like, I know it as, from a slogan. My parents always used to tell me, you're slow as molasses. I would hear 4 times a day. But tell me, give me a 101 about molasses. Where's it made? What is it? And what's it used for? I saw it on the shelf at Metro this weekend. I was looking at your different ones. So you've got a couple of different types. Give us the product 101.
Sure. So the main product that we import is called fancy molasses, and fancy molasses is pure. It's a pure syrup derived from sugar cane. So at the sugar mill level, when you crush sugarcane, you end up with this juice. So that juice can be crystallized into raw sugar, or that juice can be further heated and thickened into a syrup called fancy molasses. So fancy molasses has no sugars extracted from the syrup, nothing added, nothing taken away. It's sort of the pure premium, sort of number one grade of molasses that we sell. We also have a grade of molasses that we import called blackstrap molasses, and blackstrap molasses is a bit lower in sugar. It's higher in nutrients, much stronger flavor. But blackstrap molasses is actually a byproduct of making raw sugar at a sugar mill, or it's also a byproduct of refining sugar at a sugar refinery. And so we sort of specialize in importing fancy molasses and blackstrap molasses. And we also have a product on the market called cooking molasses, which is a blend of those 2 grades of molasses.
Yeah, that's the one in the yellow package. Now, where would I find typically your products? I think of baked beans, but what are the most common uses for your product?
We have an industrial sales business as well. So bakeries would be big users of molasses for things like brown bread, molasses cookies, gingerbread. Most people still use molasses as a seasonal baking ingredient, but it can also be used as a topping, especially in the Maritimes in Quebec. People will put it on their pancakes, or they'll put it
Yep.
on.
I remember that.
Fresh bread with molasses and butter is a great dessert that a lot of families turn to. It's used in the making of rum. It's used as a feedstock for in the manufacturing of yeast. It's a feed ingredient for cattle. It really has a lot of diverse applications, actually.
Now, one last question about the product. It arrives at your back door as a finished product, or do you need to do something to it other than packaging when it arrives at your back door?
It does undergo a little bit of. We do adjust the sugars. We adjust the solids in the product. Mm-hmm. We heat treat the product. We filter the product. But by and large, it's pretty close to being ready. But we have to do a few sort of minor adjustments to the product to make it consistent from each shipment. But we do import it in bulk ocean vessels, and we receive normally a couple deliveries a year. But it's very consistent on the way out.
Fantastic.
That's great.
The last question about the company, well, not the last question. We got lots of questions about the company, actually. How's the company's mission and values evolved over the years? I mean, how and where the product comes from, who uses it? How's all this influence your business decisions about how you evolve the company? You just hired Lori, and I hear that she's got innovation in her title, so there's clearly some thinking going on. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, I mean, every generation needs to adapt and make changes to the business so that it stays relevant. And I would say, as a family business, we have to think with the long term in mind. We always want to ensure that we're leaving this business in better shape than we found it. But in terms of some of our key values, one of our key values is we care, right? So we care about our community, we care about each other. We want to make sure we have a very positive impact on our community and our country and our broader planet. And I think the other thing that sort of makes us unique is, as a family business, our people are very important. We want to see them grow and develop. But at the same time, we have a very mature product, a mature core product. So we really need to introduce that product to the next generation of consumers, and also just sort of lean into some of our capabilities, around break bulk, around blending and packaging, and try to find new markets, new products, so that we can continue to help our customers grow.
So, Laura, you've been in the business for a year now, and Crosby's Food is not just about molasses; it's about several other products. So, tell us more about how demand for all your products is shifting, I guess, and what other business ventures are you looking into right now at Crosby's Food?
Yeah, well, I was fortunate to come into a company that was 5 generations old, which is really something. The fact that we've had our core product as a pantry staple since 1879 has really given us the brand equity that so many marketers could only dream of. So what's important is that this product, which is one product or one ingredient, if you will, it's important for us to show what today's consumer is looking for. So we know that people are trying to curtail or reduce their use of refined sugar. And this is where molasses comes in. The fact that it is a nutritive sweetener, meaning there are vitamins and minerals present in this sweetener, gives us a leg up. So we're able to address that consumer, that health and wellness consumer, if you will. It's a pure product, but the incredible versatility comes from the fact that it has flavor. It's not just a sweetener, but it has flavor. So, James talked about, traditionally baking, and it has been for generations, but we're seeing a great growth in the barbecue space. So moving it into summer consumption. as well. I mean, we all know you can't have a great barbecue sauce without molasses. But what we have found is that the ability to take it forward to a different group of consumers than we always have has really been embraced. So when we're looking at, other types of business ventures, we're looking at just that. What is allowing us to extend the Crosby's brand to other parts of the store? So we're working on some things right now as it would relate to sauces, baking, dairy. So we're looking at a number of different ventures, even snacking. And, that'll be, I guess, hopefully our next visit on your podcast when we can introduce you to some of these products. We'll have to send you a care package. But that said, our first innovation really that we're putting onto the market right now is our maple and molasses. Obviously, it is just what it says on the tin, as they say. It's maple syrup and molasses. And people say, could you be any more Canadian? And well,
exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Is it out on the market now?
Yeah. So we're just introducing it actually into the marketplace. Right now you can buy
Great timing.
Yeah. It's great timing, isn't it?
Maple season.
Yeah. And it was funny because over the past summer, I spent a lot of time on the road sampling consumers at various shows. And 100% of the time, if you like molasses, you will love maple and molasses. So we're really fortunate to be able to go out and speak directly to the consumer. And as we start building our new portfolio of products, it's something that is critical to me and to us as a company is speaking to the consumer directly, speaking to the retailer directly, and then coming up with a product or an initiative that answers what both are looking for. And that's really, hopefully we're finding a market gap in there as well. And that's something that's really driving our next innovation. So for example, we have been working on healthy creamers, healthy gelatins, hydration products. And these are products that take our core competency of dry powder blending, of liquid blending, and putting them forward in a product that consumers are looking for. Everybody wants convenience. And for us as a company, we're very much big into sustainability. I'm sure if anybody has seen our carton sitting on the shelf, that carton is 100% recyclable. At the same time, we think that there is definitely an opportunity for us to develop a powdered beverage line, hot and cold, some more nutritive than others, and be able to ship powders where the consumer would reconstitute at home or in their office or in the gym or what have you. And looking at it always through a better for you lens. So what we do today and what we can do tomorrow, we're using our core competencies as a company, but we're re-envisioning it for today's consumer.
So as the champion for innovation within Crosby's Food, like how do you get your inspiration for all these new products, like with maple, and you're working with dairy, and how do you get inspired? Like how do you get your ideas as an organization?
Well, it's a number of things. Obviously, macro consumer trends really come into play, micro consumer trends. Understanding where today's consumer is going. Everybody, I think, is interested in health and wellness, and the small changes they can make to help themselves. So there's health and wellness, us being more self-sufficient. I think we've seen it when we saw a lot of people leaving the big cities and migrating to Eastern Canada because they wanted to have more land around them. They wanted to perhaps grow their own food. They're learning how to fix things and build things. So our product goes hand in hand with that. We're a product that's always been there, but we know that we need to extend it. As James said, today's younger consumers, so unless you've grown up with a household that for generations has had molasses in the pantry, you might not know what molasses is. You're not sure how it's used. You might taste it at first and go, oh gosh, this is unlike anything I've ever tasted. So it's up to us to really use our strong brand equity and look for products that what I call are molasses adjacent, things that molasses go into, that may be more appealing to a consumer as opposed to just a raw ingredient. And then at the same time, understanding where trends in the market are going. So we see such a growth in beverages, hot and cold beverages, coffees, lattes, that sort of thing. So again, taking our core competency and extending that into a range that doesn't necessarily have all of the synthetics and preservatives in it that a lot of the brands do. So it's about still continuing to offer our consumers, our customers, as pure a product as possible, because we really do care about the consumer. It's something that we'd be very, very keen to share with our friends and family, and it's something that we'd be proud of to put on the market alongside molasses.
That's great. James, I want to switch gears a little bit. As CEO of Crosby's Food, what are some of the biggest challenges that you're facing right now? And also, you could present to us the opportunities that you also see moving forward.
Well, like all business, there's a lot of rising costs out there these days, from packaging to ingredients to interest rates, property tax, wages, all that kind of stuff. So, when the costs of your business are rising faster than your volumes or your ability to raise prices, you can get into trouble really quickly. So, our investment in R&D and business development and focus on innovation is really how we're responding to that. All of our customers want innovation, so we're again trying to adjust our formulations, introduce sort of new and improved packaging formats wherever we can. Recyclability is very important right now, and just ensuring that we're adapting with the times, right? Because businesses that fail are businesses that fail to adapt. So we really have to, not necessarily be the first out of the blocks, but we go to a lot of trade shows and visit stores and are really trying to stay current with where the world of food is going.
Lori, let's talk about, you're new to the organization, but it has clearly deep roots in Atlantic Canada. What involvement, what role does that play, and what involvement does the organization have in the local community and social impact? And of course, you're also doing business in the Caribbean. Does the business get involved in social and community engagement where the product is made?
So I just wanted to say that we now source our molasses from Guatemala, and we have for a number of years. So the business transitioned quite a number of years ago. Mm-hmm. But let me come back to that. Yes, there are deep roots in Atlantic Canada. I was born in Fredericton, and it's this full circle moment when you come back home. And everybody remembers molasses. It was either in the pantry or on the table. And that is something, again, that is very near and dear to us, is to foster that very loyal consumer we have here. There's been this beautiful generational thread for the past 5 generations. And as James and I have both said, we want to ensure that continues. So we have to look at things a little differently and speak a little different language. And we will. But it's also a great test and learn ground. So before we start with national rollouts, we like to test and learn here in our own backyard. And we've done that. We did it with our barbecue contest last year, the Crosby's Secret Sauce contest, which is coming to a city near you in New Brunswick and hopefully Nova Scotia this year. But what that was is we put a call out for entrants for your best homemade barbecue sauce. We know that there is a very involved community that loves to make their own sauce. It's something that you hang your hat on in the summer. So we put out a call for entries, and we were testing a theory that we thought we could attract a different consumer than our core consumer. And we did. All of our semifinalists, with the exception of one, were young males. And it was interesting to see them utilizing molasses in a way that they embrace. And that's in terms of making their own sauces and rubs and glazes. And with that, we're going into our second year of the competition. And we've been able to attract even more consumers, pit masters, ribbers, grillers, home grillers. So we're really excited about expanding that initiative. And again, we were able to do that because of the strong brand equity of the brand. And our Christmas contest, if you will, I say contest because we want to engage our customers, our consumers. We want them to see that we care about them. The generational thread that I spoke of, it's very strong, and most conversations begin with "I remember." I remember my grandmother. I remember my mother. I remember. My grandfather used to take a tablespoon of blackstrap. So there's something very strong and profound about that connection, and it's very much a taste of home.
There you go. Your next product can be not my dad's molasses.
Not my dad's molasses.
Exactly.
There you go. James, in our last episode of the show, we were reporting on or talking about some pretty tough investigative reporting that happened in India for the beverage companies around how they were getting their sugar. And I wanted to just, talk to you about your suppliers in Guatemala and how you engage with them and make sure their ethics match your ethics, which are pretty clear. So talk a little bit about that.
Well, we're doing some work on this topic right now because there is a federal government a federal government initiative just around
anti-slavery.
Anti-slavery sourcing.
Yep.
So we're working closely with our supplier right now around their certifications and their third-party audits, just to ensure that working conditions are acceptable. But there definitely is some areas of the world where working conditions around sugar can be pretty horrible. So we definitely don't want to be doing business with those types of sugar mills.
And I'm just curious because one of the things that the brands say is, look, we hire third parties and we take their word for it. And it's pretty clear taking somebody's word for it is just not working. It's not working in food processing where they have little children cleaning plants in America, and it's not working in other places of the world. Do you go down and check these things out for yourself? I mean, you must have had long-standing relationships with these vendors. I mean, that's a great partnership. So talk a little bit about, how you get engaged to make sure they match what you have as pretty clear ethics.
Yeah, no, my brother and I traveled down to Guatemala together a number of years ago, and then actually last year we had our chief operating officer, our QA manager, and then two other representatives from our bulk storage facility all traveled down to Guatemala, just again so they could see for themselves the whole supply chain. Yeah. And I think that we learned a ton on that visit, and again we're concerned about the working conditions at the mill, but also just, the food safety practices, right? Because we have to ensure that we, that we're confident in the food safety and food quality and the conditions under which all those products were made. Yeah. So
I guess at this point, could ask either you, James or Lori, how can people get in touch? How can they get more information about your traditional products and new products as well?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. You can reach us on LinkedIn at Crosby Foods Limited. And then regarding our brand, Crosby's Molasses on Facebook and Instagram. And most importantly, crosbys.com. If you want to visit our shop, then you can go to crosbys.com and then look for us at various festivals and tastings throughout the summer. We feel it's very important to get out and speak to our consumers and listen to what they're looking for.
That's great. Again, thank you so much for accepting our invitation. 5 generations. Wow. It's very rare. How many food businesses do we have in Canada that has gone through 5 generations? Do you know the answer, James? I have no idea.
I don't, but for whatever reason, in the Maritimes, we tend to have a few of them. So I know locally, there's Moosehead Breweries, there's
Moosehead
Brothers, Barber Foods, are I guess a few multi-generational family businesses that come to mind.
Well, congratulations. Great success. And I'm sure you're preparing the business for your kids. Huh? They're going to take over at some point.
Scary thought.
Great stuff. Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you again for coming on our show.
Oh, thank you both. We've really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
All right. Great interview. Wonderful to see new innovation coming out of that New Brunswick New Brunswick business, and look for some innovation on the Last Request barbecue show too, because I'm going to start making some stuff with molasses, some barbecue, and
you can do a lot of stuff with molasses.
I got an idea mixing it with bourbon and making a sauce for some ribs. Anyway, let's talk about olive oil. So olive prices seem to be, and I'm not quite sure some days, the difference between, it's like chocolate, right? Markets go up, markets go down. There's droughts, There's other things. So chocolate, we talked about chocolate kind of going up dramatically because of in that case, of fungus or whatever. Now we're reading about olive oil and the crops not doing well. And is this a short-term phenomenon, or is this a climate influenced? I guess it is climate, but is it short-term or long-term? What do you think?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, so first of all, the reason why prices are skyrocketing is due to a drought affecting 3 countries at once, Spain, Portugal, and Greece. And so it's been going on for a while. So we knew this was going to happen. In fact, if you look at our own CPI here in Canada, the top 3 food items that have actually gone up the most in the last 12 months, number 3, infant formula, plus 17%. Sugar, plus 21%. That's not surprising either. And the number 1 food item at the grocery store, which has increased the most in the last 12 months, you guessed it, olive oil, plus 44%.
44%.
44%, yeah. And so that's major. Unless you go to Seattle and you're given free olive oil by some good Italian friends.
I don't know. At that kind of rates, they might be a little more parsimonious about it.
They may actually want a Bitcoin in return or something.
Yeah.
But I would say right now the situation is a bit dire. Even if things improve this year, I'm not sure prices are going to drop anytime soon, because demand for olive oil is it's pretty elastic. If you want olive oil, people are dedicated to olive oil. Now with 44%, it's getting higher, so it's getting up there. So maybe some people
might substitute to a seed oil, I guess, or avocado oil,
avocado, sunflower,
something, right? I mean, the avocado is a good substitute.
But canola won't cut it for sure.
No, very different.
But very different. But olive oil is expensive now. Absolutely. Yeah.
So a couple of fun factoids to end the show with. Factoid number 1, and I'm not sure I'm ready to connect this to the Ozempic nation issues with Ozempic, but did you read that Unilever's selling off their ice cream business? So they bought Ben & Jerry's, this kind of multi-billion-dollar business, Magnum in Europe, and they're getting out of ice cream. And my first thought was, why would you, as Unilever, get out of ice cream? Are you worried that now's the peak and that, under Ozempic, the people demand will be less? So I thought that was really interesting. Did you hear about Unilever's move, and do you have any thoughts on it?
Well, I saw the news. To be honest, my first thought wasn't about Ozempic. My thought was about plant-based. Unilever has been making a lot of noise around vegetable proteins. You can feel that they're really shifting a little bit. And dairy is, prices are going up. It's hard to make money in dairy. Production is always difficult to predict, getting expensive. Prices fluctuate. There's more. Let's face it. There's more certainty with vegetable protein, and I think they're starting to embrace that space a little more slowly but surely. And in their branding, you can see that they're making that shift too.
Interesting.
With mayonnaise, for example.
Yeah. I'm seeing more mayonnaise with like avocado oils. It's been interesting watching the development of that category. And
you can feel, Elman's is probably their top brand in Canada. I haven't checked, but I think it is. And frankly, I actually think that's it's part of that movement strategy towards more plant-based. But Yeah, and frankly, consumption of ice cream at home, I think, is declining. I mean, people are seeing ice cream as a treat you go out for, not necessarily
More
something
experience.
you buy
I see.
to eat at home.
Now, this last thing is pretty quirky. So we've been talking
about the eclipse, are you?
Not going to talk about the eclipse. I'm tired of talking about the eclipse.
And what cows do during an eclipse?
I guess they lie down, really quickly.
They shouldn't look at the sun.
Don't look at you can't even walk your dog, apparently. So we bought glasses
on cows so they won't go blind.
Okay, this is almost as quirky as that. So Amazon, as you probably know, we've talked about this a long time ago. They wanted to get into the grocery business. So if you go back a bunch of years, they bought Whole Foods, $12 billion. And then they started their own Amazon Go, which was a convenience store that had a lot of high tech, right? I called it the shop it like you sold it, cameras. You walk in, you buy stuff, and you get charged, right? It's pretty cool, right?
Yeah.
High tech stuff. So then they took that technology, what they call their just walk out technology, and they decided, well, this is great. Let's apply it to a big grocery store. And it didn't work. It's not what people were looking for. So they kind of hit the pause button on the Go. Now they've just announced they're going back at it, but they're ripping out the Amazon Go function, and they're going to more smart carts and things like that. But here's the quirky thing. Here is the most quirkiest thing in that release. They also announced there was 1,000 people in China. There is 1,000 people in India watching labeled videos to ensure accurate checkouts. So behind the technology, like the Wizard of Oz, was 1,000 people at desks in India watching monitors of watching people shop. So it really wasn't all that fancy technology up in the sky. It was 1,000 Indian nationals sitting in India watching videos.
Yikes.
And checking the accuracy. Anyway.
Some high-tech stuff, eh?
So just in case you get carried away with all these high-tech solutions, even Amazon, a little bit of jazz, let's call that jazz hands. That would be a charitable.
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
That would be charitable.
It's how you look that counts. It's not how you do it.
Oh my God. All right. Now I also, before we go, I want to dedicate this episode to the great SCTV alumnus Joe Flaherty, who passed this week after a brief illness. I grew up watching SCTV. Joe's characters, station owner Guy Caballero, Ken Floyd, he did a great.
Hey, Shooter McGavin, you want to go to Red Lobster?
Oh my God, he was so funny. I was watching the thing with him and John Candy. They get in and get out.
Jackass.
They get in a car in Moncton and drive to Toronto. There's good jobs for surgeons and lawyer jobs in Toronto. Anyways, very funny. Listen, he wasn't even Canadian. He was the only American on the show.
I didn't know that until he died. I looked him up, and I didn't realize he was not Canadian. Yeah.
Anyway, so more Canadian than Canadian because
was he from Pittsburgh or something?
That's right. He was from Pittsburgh, native Pittsburgh. So anyway, what a career. And I was watching some of the videos last night, and they still make me laugh. So if you're of the generation like myself.
One movie I know of him is Happy Gilmore. That's the only one.
Yeah. Well, go up. If you don't know him, I'll put a link in the show notes to one of my favorite skits with him and John Candy going from driving Moncton to Toronto, where there's roads. There's actual roads and jobs. So it's very fun. Anyway. All right. Well, that's it for the show. We got more great guests coming up next week. But until then, I'm Michael LeBlanc, consumer growth consultant, podcaster, keynote speaker, and you are?
I'm the food professor, Sylvain Charlebois.
All right. Safe travels, everyone, and we'll talk to you next week.
Well, let's go. All right. Oh, Gord, you're going to love it in Toronto. They got roads and everything there. All kinds of roads. And jobs, too? Lots of jobs. Doctoring jobs and lawyering jobs. Jobs for me and you. Oh, let's go, then. All right.
There's a rainbow in Toronto where the Maritimers are bold. They always get a pot full, but they never get a pot of gold. But they're to it and at it and to it. You gotta tune your attitude in. If you don't get at it,